Right now, thousands of retirees across America are discovering they qualify for monthly payments they never knew existed. The recent executive action signed into law has quietly redirected how certain Social Security dividend distributions work, and the groups now eligible might surprise you. If you've been collecting benefits for years, or you're about to retire, what's happening in Washington could put extra money in your account starting next month. Here's what most people don't realize. This isn't about standard Social Security checks. We're talking about supplementary dividend payments that were previously limited to specific categories of recipients. The new directive has expanded eligibility criteria, and financial advisors are scrambling to help their clients understand who qualifies and who doesn't. The changes affect three main groups, and chances are you or someone you know falls into at least one of them. But here's the catch. You won't automatically receive these payments just because you're eligible. There's a specific process, certain documents you'll need, and critical deadlines you cannot afford to miss. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly where you stand and what steps to take next. Let me be completely transparent with you right from the start. There's a lot of confusion swirling around about Social Security changes, executive orders, and what they actually mean for your monthly income. I've spent considerable time digging through the official documentation, speaking with Social Security Administration representatives, and consulting with financial experts who specialize in retirement benefits to bring you the real story. What I'm about to share with you isn't clickbait or speculation. It's based on actual policy changes that are happening right now, and understanding these changes could make a significant difference in your financial situation. First, let's talk about what's actually changed and why it matters to you. The Social Security system has always been complex, with dozens of different benefit categories, eligibility requirements, and payment structures that can be incredibly difficult to navigate. Most people think Social Security is just one simple check that shows up every month, but the reality is far more nuanced. There are retirement benefits, disability benefits, survivor benefits, spousal benefits, and several lesser-known supplementary payments that many Americans have never even heard of. The recent policy shifts have specifically targeted how some of these supplementary payments are calculated and distributed, and more importantly, who qualifies to receive them. Now, when we talk about dividend checks in the context of Social Security, we're not talking about the traditional investment dividends you might receive from stocks or bonds. What we're referring to here are supplementary payments that function similarly to dividends in the sense that they're additional funds distributed beyond your standard monthly benefit. These payments have existed in various forms for years, but they've typically been limited to very specific groups of recipients who met extremely narrow criteria. What's changed now is that the eligibility net has been cast much wider, bringing thousands of additional retirees into the fold who previously wouldn't have qualified. Let me explain how we got here. The Social Security system was designed decades ago when the American workforce, life expectancy, and economic conditions were dramatically different from what they are today. Over the years, policymakers have made incremental adjustments to try to keep the system solvent and relevant. But many of these changes happened quietly, without much public attention or understanding. The recent executive action represents one of the most significant restructurings of supplementary benefit distribution in recent memory. It's the result of years of advocacy from senior rights groups, budget negotiations in Congress, and mounting pressure to address the financial challenges facing millions of American retirees who are struggling to make ends meet on fixed incomes. Here's where things get interesting, and this is information you absolutely need to understand. The three newly targeted groups that are now eligible for these supplementary dividend payments include retirees who have worked in certain sectors that were previously excluded from full benefit calculations, individuals who retired during specific economic periods when cost of living adjustments didn't keep pace with actual inflation, and a third category that includes people who took early retirement but continued working part-time in ways that affected their benefit calculations. If any of these descriptions sound like they might apply to you, I need you to pay very close attention to what comes next, because the steps you take in the coming weeks could directly impact your household budget for years to come. Let's break down each of these groups in detail so you can determine where you stand. The first group includes individuals who spent a significant portion of their careers working in sectors that had separate pension systems or modified Social Security participation. This includes certain state and local government employees, educators in specific districts, and workers in industries that had unique collective bargaining agreements. For decades, these workers often received reduced Social Security benefits because of something called the windfall elimination provision, or the government pension offset. These provisions were designed to prevent what lawmakers considered double dipping, but in practice, they often left dedicated public servants with far less retirement income than their private sector counterparts. The new policy modifications have created a pathway for supplementary payments that help offset some of these historical reductions, essentially acknowledging that these workers contributed to their communities and deserve fair treatment in retirement. The second group that's now eligible consists of people who retired during what economists call the lost decades for cost of living adjustments. If you retired between certain years when inflation was officially measured as low, but actual living costs for seniors were rising rapidly, you've probably noticed that your Social Security checks haven't kept pace with your real expenses. Healthcare costs, prescription medications, property taxes, and basic necessities have all increased at rates that far exceeded the official inflation calculations used to determine annual benefit adjustments. This created a situation where millions of retirees found themselves falling further behind financially with each passing year, even though they'd worked hard and paid into the system their entire lives. The supplementary dividend payments now being distributed to this group are designed to help bridge that gap and provide some measure of catch-up relief for those years when the cost of living adjustments simply weren't adequate. The third group includes individuals who made the difficult decision to take early retirement, but then found themselves needing or wanting to continue working part-time. The Social Security system has always had complicated rules about working while receiving benefits, and these rules have changed multiple times over the years. If you took benefits before your full retirement age and continued earning income, you may have had your benefits reduced temporarily or permanently in ways that still affect your monthly check today. The new policy recognizes that many people who took early retirement did so out of necessity rather than choice, perhaps due to health issues, caregiving responsibilities, or job market conditions beyond their control. The supplementary payments being directed to this group aim to provide some compensation for the permanent benefit reductions they incurred by claiming early and working simultaneously. Now, here's what you need to understand about actually receiving these payments. This is absolutely critical, and it's where a lot of people are going to miss out simply because they don't know what to do. The Social Security Administration is not automatically enrolling everyone who qualifies. They don't have the resources or the updated information systems to identify every eligible person and start sending checks without any action on your part. This means you need to take specific steps to claim what you're entitled to. The process involves submitting documentation that proves your eligibility, verifying your work history in the relevant sectors or time periods, and in some cases, providing additional information about your current financial situation. The documentation requirements vary depending on which of the three groups you fall into. For those in the first category who worked in public sector or specially covered employment, you'll need to gather records of your work history, pension information, and documentation of how previous Social Security calculations affected your benefits. This might include old W-2 forms, pension statements, and correspondence from the Social Security Administration about benefit calculations. I know this sounds like a lot of paperwork, and frankly, it is. But the potential increase in your monthly income makes it absolutely worth the effort. Some people in this category are seeing supplementary payments of several $100s per month, which adds up to thousands of dollars annually. For the second group affected by inadequate cost of living adjustments, the documentation process is somewhat different. You'll need to demonstrate that you retired during the specified time periods and that your benefits have been subject to the lower adjustment rates. The good news is that most of this information is already in the Social Security Administration's records. However, you'll still need to file the appropriate forms and make sure your case is properly reviewed. The challenge here is that the time periods and calculations can be confusing, and many people aren't sure whether they actually qualify. If you retired any time in the past 15 to 20 years and you felt like your Social Security checks haven't kept up with your actual expenses, there's a strong possibility you're eligible for these supplementary payments. The third group, those who took early retirement and continued working, faces perhaps the most complex documentation requirements. You'll need to provide detailed information about when you claimed benefits, how much you earned while receiving benefits, and how those earnings affected your benefit calculations. The Social Security Administration will need to review your complete earnings record and recalculate how the early retirement penalties should be adjusted in light of the new policy. This process can take several months, which is why it's so important to start as soon as possible. Every month you delay is potentially a month of supplementary payments you're not receiving. Let me address something that I know is on many of your minds. You're probably wondering whether this is legitimate, whether it's too good to be true, or whether there's some catch you're not being told about. I completely understand that skepticism, especially in an era where there's so much misinformation circulating about government benefits and financial programs. The truth is that these changes are absolutely real, and they're already being implemented. Thousands of people have already started receiving their supplementary payments. The reason you might not have heard about this through mainstream news channels is that Social Security policy changes, unless they're massive overhauls affecting everyone, tend to get very little media coverage. The changes we're discussing here affect significant numbers of people, but they're not universal changes that apply to every single Social Security recipient, which is why they haven't received the widespread attention you might expect. Another question people frequently ask is why these changes are happening now. The timing relates to a combination of factors, including budget allocations that were finalized, pressure from advocacy groups who've been fighting for these adjustments for years, and a growing recognition among policymakers that the current Social Security system isn't adequately serving certain groups of retirees who did everything right but still find themselves struggling financially. There's also been increasing awareness that the official inflation measures used for cost of living adjustments don't accurately reflect the real expenses that seniors face, particularly in healthcare and housing. These supplementary dividend payments represent an attempt, however imperfect, to address some of these long-standing inequities in the system. I want to be clear about the timeline here because timing is crucial. The application process for these supplementary payments is open now, but there are filing deadlines that you need to be aware of. While the exact deadlines vary depending on your specific situation and which group you fall into, the general timeframe for initial applications is approximately 6 months from the policy implementation date. Miss that window, and you could face delays in receiving payments, or in some cases might not be able to claim retroactive payments for months you were eligible but hadn't yet applied. The Social Security Administration is notoriously slow in processing claims and appeals, so waiting until the last minute is not a strategy I would recommend. Let me walk you through what the actual application process looks like so you know what to expect. Your first step is to contact the Social Security Administration, either by phone, through their website, or by visiting a local office in person. I'll be honest with you, getting through on the phone can be incredibly frustrating. You might spend hours on hold or get disconnected multiple times. The website can be confusing to navigate if you're not particularly comfortable with technology. Visiting an office in person often means long wait times and the inconvenience of traveling to a location that might not be near your home. Despite these challenges, you need to make that initial contact to request the specific forms for supplementary benefit applications. When you make contact, be very clear about which category you believe you fall into. The more specific you can be about your situation, the more likely you are to get accurate information and the correct forms. Once you have the forms, take your time filling them out completely and accurately. Incomplete applications are one of the main reasons for processing delays and denials. If there's a question you're not sure how to answer, it's worth seeking help rather than guessing or leaving it blank. Many communities have senior centers or legal aid organizations that offer free assistance with Social Security paperwork. Some financial advisors and elder law attorneys also provide these services, though they may charge fees. Consider the potential benefit amounts when deciding whether to invest in professional help with the application process.